Okay, so we've gone over these examples of eugenics in practice. But Dr. Davis, we're doing immigration this week. What? So, eugenics influenced ideas about immigration, particularly in how immigrants were perceived in society. There was an idea of who was a white person and who was not based on the color of their skin, but based on their immigration status. And that immigration status was based on eugenics and characteristics that were perceived. So on the slide here, I have the social hierarchy. And this was the social hierarchy up through about 1945. So at the top of the social hierarchy, we have wealthy WASP. So WASP are wealthy white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Americans. So this is really important. Anglo-Saxon means they come from Britain, and I want to emphasize this, Britain, not Ireland, Britain, or Western Europe, such as France and Germany. They are Protestant. They are not Catholic. They are Protestant. So at the top of society were wealthy persons who had emigrated to the United States from Western Europe and who were Protestant, this one form of Christianity. Under them were middle class WASP, poor WASP, and then were old immigrants. So old immigrants were people who had come to the United States between 1840 and 1860, thereabouts. These are people mainly from Western Europe. And that's where our line of whiteness ends. Everyone under the line of whiteness were considered to be colored. And that was the term they used. That was literally what was put on their passport or all of their, literally everything they had. So the first group of quote-unquote colored persons were the Irish. So why do you think that is? Why do you think the Irish were considered to be colored? The main reason is because Ireland was the first British colony. So the Irish have always been considered to be less than British. And so when we see this hierarchy developing in the United States, it's going to continue. They're going to kind of adapt British views on the Irish. Then under the Irish come the new immigrants. These are people whose skin color is still white, but they're from Eastern Europe and Southern Europe. Moreover, they're more likely to be Catholic during this period. Under them were Asians, the Latinx population, and Native Americans. And at the very bottom of the social hierarchy were African Americans. Now, this social hierarchy was kind of very strict. There were ways to move up the social hierarchy to cross the line of whiteness, but they were kind of hard to do. Most of the time, it went through your husband and your husband's status. So for example, let's say I am a poor white WASP. So I am an American citizen, but my family is Protestant and I can trace my lineage back to Britain. But I marry somebody who is a new immigrant. So this would be somebody from Italy, let's say, or actually my husband's family is from Poland. And that's actually true in real life. So I marry someone from Poland, which would be a new immigrant. So I'm above the line of whiteness. My husband, where would he be? He's below the line of whiteness. Well, my status is going to dramatically change. I go from being a white person to being a colored person, quite literally, because of my husband's status. So that reading you had to do for me on how women lost their citizenship by marrying immigrants, that's what's happening here. That's literally what's happening. They're going from being white persons to being people of color. This eugenics, this social Darwinism is playing a part in the social hierarchy with that. Now, let's say we have somebody who is a new immigrant. So we'll have somebody from Italy, a woman from Italy who marries a poor white WASP. She'll go from being a person of color to being a white person. according to this hierarchy. Now, will she ever be accepted into white society? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. But she will technically be considered white. Her passport, her documents will go from saying her race is colored, and again, that's literally what they wrote on there, to saying white because of her husband's status. Now, this had implications for your children. So, for example, again, we're going to go with the example of I'm a poor white wasp, I marry a Polish immigrant. So now I'm under the line of whiteness. I'm going to be considered colored now. My children will be considered colored. So a lot of the discrimination that we see in terms of race, where there will be signs saying no people of color here, will actually apply to my children because of this. And so often what we see is people in this time practicing eugenics, so practicing selective breeding practices to make sure they don't cross that line of whiteness, particularly they don't go under the line of whiteness. So hopefully this makes sense. In the classroom, I have students raise their hands, and usually most of them will realize they're under the line of whiteness with that. If you have questions, let me know.